But the guys who are in that next step of 1 million, who are like, I've tasted 1 million, I want more, that's where you get.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Cyber Confidential. We're going to dive into the mysteries behind mergers and acquisitions for MSPs on this week's Cyber Confidential. Let's welcome our guest, Charlene Ignacio, CEO of Fornix Marketing. Charlene, pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much, Mike, for having me and the magic we're going to make today. I can't wait.
Charlene, we were talking at the MSP Expo a few weeks ago, and you gave us a quick little deep dive on mergers and acquisitions, but let's start, just paint the background picture. What is it? What are we talking about? Give us some background information so we can dive into the details.
Well, mergers and acquisition is hot in our industry. It's not going away, and our industry has been seeing this time and time again. Over the last couple of years, MSPs have been the hottest topic, the highest buy of any type of technology because of the fact that it's never going to go away. It survived COVID, and definitely as the technology continues to emerge, AI gets introduced, and businesses continue to become global and remote, this is not going away, Mike. M&A is here, and people want to buy MSPs. A lot of our MSSPs are also feeling this as they continue to grow their businesses. And of course, nonetheless, 2025, as the rest of the world catches up to cybersecurity and the things that they need to know, our MSPs are moving into MSSP, which makes them definitely more profitable also.
Okay. I think that's the first place we got to start is like, why is this a topic that people are starting to talk about? Who's doing the buying?
Right.
And why do MSPs appeal to those types of buyers?
Well, I think during COVID, everyone realized that technology is not going away, right? Security's definitely not going away. It's finally starting to take what I consider center stage because everyone's finally getting heavily regulated. A lot of these industries have been getting hacked. There's been breaches. I can just think of a couple of big brands that everyone would know and go, oh, I mean, it is impacting business and how we do it. And so, Mike, nothing has changed in regards to why people want to buy businesses, but the kind of businesses they want to buy is the change in the market. And who's coming after them? PE firms, for sure, because technology is not going to go away. This is going to be a profitable business. This is a business that is going to continue to produce. Customers are going to continue to need the services. And nonetheless, not only private equity, I mean, there's a lot of acquisitions into mergers where other MSPs are buying smaller MSPs so that they can become what I consider a mammoth. And then last but definitely not least, I think as cybersecurity takes front and center, this is the reason why, at Fornix, we push this evolution of growing your MSP into an MSSP because your clients already assume you're doing it. And a lot of these MSPs shy away from it. And I'm thinking that's additional revenue you're just leaving on the table. At a recent conference I just spoke to last week, we saw 80% of the room hands go up because they said, Charlene, we make more money selling cybersecurity. And so, Mike, because they're making more money, because it's not going away, right? This is an industry that's going to stay. These PE firms, a lot of these acquisitions are happening from MSP to MSSP. And then, of course, MSPs buying MSSPs and MSPs. It's nonstop. This is happening time and time again. I just signed an LOI for an organization because now they want to move into acquisition. And they said, hey, Char, can you help us? And I said, okay, well, there we go. They need the growth and they need someone to merge these two brands together so that they can go to market.
Okay, let's unpack some of the things you talked about. So what is a PE firm, private equity firm? Yes. What is it? Where do they come from? Do they do just MSPs? What are some of the details there that we need to know?
Yes. So PE guys, private equity, there's backed by banks or family offices. If you guys know, some of the wealthy families have private equity funds that they push to do acquisitions. Everything is being bought under the sun. That's not only MSPs. I mean, they continue to buy infrastructure, cannabis. I mean, there's multiple industries as we continue to grow. This is happening. Mike, one of the things that you would probably find super interesting is that a lot of these PE firms that are coming into this space never bought technology before until COVID. Post-COVID triggered a lot of this new eyes on this industry. It was kind of like the sleeping giant, I call it. And no one was really like bothering us. I mean, none of these big brokers came in. And now it's like, wow, you could go to a conference. I spoke at several M&A conferences, and brokers, one per every 5, just asking, hey, when do you want to sell? When do you want to sell? Sometimes these brokers, unfortunately, will email to death the MSP and call them every day to buy them.
Right.
Because
They're prospecting. This is their business machine now. Like their business model is take money, and instead of investing it in the stock market,
right,
they're investing it in a business that can provide them a return.
Yes. But I think, Mike, here's the key. These PE firms, of course, will come in and they will, improve it, get it to profitability. That's why a lot of these mergers and acquisitions will happen where the MSP will stay on for at least first 12 to 24 months, because clients want to be ensured that their technology services are going to continue, that they're getting the best service, because that's really where, the PE firm is making their final decision on is what industries are you in? How am I going to get my money back? And can I turn and flip this, in 3 years? That's a very common practice, guys. A lot of people want to go to the other side where, Mike, well, why do they come in and just, well, that's what they're doing. I mean, some of these, fire sales happen because life changes, right? A lot of these business partnerships, one wants to exit, one wants to stay. I mean, there's just a lot of movement in the space. And at the expo that Mike and I were at, the 2 panels that I led, many of the people in the room were like, this is something that they're doing to grow their business. They're not even looking at sales. They're looking at acquisition as a
You're talking about
strategy.
the MSP at this.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep breaking it down. I like the basics. So there's 3. You've already highlighted 3 stakeholders here: the private equity group,
Yes.
the managed service provider that's being incorporated here, and
Right.
then the clients, the existing clients of the managed service provider.
Yeah.
I want to hear the experience and what each one of those stakeholders want out of this deal, so that everyone's happy. Let's start with the private equity group because we started there. What are they looking for? What do they want to get out of it?
Well, first and foremost, they want a profitable business. I just wrote the book with Rachel with Profit First, right? It's a worldwide phenomenon. It's a strategy that helps businesses become profit first focused versus, making only a 5% margin when they should be making 20 to 30. So Mike, PE firms and any investment group, any broker, they want a profitable business. They want to know that their margins are not going to be, and this is terrible, but a lot of MSPs don't even pay themselves enough. And so when they think that their business is worth 2, 3, 4 times more, the PE firm's like, wait a minute, let's just do the books correctly. I've been in deals where the deal's been stalled for 6 to 12 months because the books were horrific. So PE firms are looking for a profitable business in industries that already are regulated and can continue to need these services. And I'm not saying anything is bad about, the flower shop or the dog groomer shop, but that is not the customer base you want, guys, when you're looking at your business. And especially when a PE firm is interested, they want industries that are regulated, are going to be around, and are going to pay their bills. So that's the first interest. The second, MSPs are looking to grow by acquisition. This is not uncommon. A lot of us are community focused, right? As you know, we build community with MSPAA. We have community, right, with trusted advisors in a global sector. A lot of these communities of MSPs work alongside with them. And a lot of these guys, they start off their business and now they're at 10 million, 12 million, 25 million. They're doing acquisitions because they know that that's the fastest way to cash, is to get another business that's profitable, acquire them. That help desk comes in, that CTO, that engineering team, the L2, L3, they come in and now they're managing a business more efficiently and effectively. The reason why that's happening, Mike, and this is with one of our clients right now today. In fact, I just got off the call before hopping on. He said, Charlene, if I can do 2 or 3 this year, I am going to then sell at a $15 million mark. And I said, that's perfect. He goes, but I need help because now my customer is confused, which is going to lead us to the third person that's experiencing this M&A. This customer of yours does not necessarily worry about what banner that you're under. They want to focus in on what kind of service they're going to get. And this is a little bit of a pain, Mike. Sometimes these M&As, are going through the process, but they don't have a plan for their current customers and employees. A lot of times the top level employees of the company aren't even told about an M&A. And I think that's a distrust and a disservice to them. I think you should be open and honest and communicate. And if you had good agreements in place, you're not going to lose your top talent, because that does impact a sale when your top talent leaves the company before an acquisition is done or immediately after, because they either take clients from you or unfortunately they leave it a mess. And that's very common. And it's just because there's not a communication, there's not a transparency, there's not an expectation. And second, and not definitely last point I want to make, some of the clients, because you're focusing on the acquisition, guys, you guys start delivering poor service because you're so focused on the acquisition that you forgot what got you there. And so I have seen deals fall apart on the 11th hour where they've lost half of their clients because they're like, hey, you guys aren't picking up the phone. You're not, helping me out. I've been down for a couple of days. And so, Mike, they wonder why they get to the deal table and their valuation drops. It's like, what happened to your customers? And that's for anyone who's buying the business, guys. This doesn't have to be a PE firm. It doesn't have to be another MSP. This is just good business. Like, why are your customers leaving at the 11th hour and we're trying to close a deal? That's a bad business decision.
Sure. Okay. Is the PE firm doing this is their end goal to improve the valuation of the business and then resell, or are they looking to hold on to this asset and then realize value through, disbursements or something?
First and foremost, PE firms are there to turn a profit because they usually want to go in the first 2 years and then the next 3 years is to exit. So they do want to improve some of the process. Sometimes, and there's nothing bad, guys, to be said about, someone who's run a profitable business. Maybe they're at their first million, but it took them 20 years to get there. That's not a profitable business. That's a long way to make some money. So the PE firm will come in and say, how can we improve? Where can we cut our cost? How can we streamline some of those processes? And so, Mike, when a PE firm comes in, yes, they do have the money to make the deal happen, but they also have the money to fix it. And by fixing it is streamlining it. That's why a lot of MSPs I've seen, Char, I don't want to sell to a big firm. Why? They're acquiring your company. You get to do the exit. You get to go and live your life, or maybe start up another MSP because now you realize what it's going to take to be more profitable. Go and do it. Like that, it's not a bad thing that they want to improve those processes and cut your costs and, be able to do it. Here's the problem though. And Mike, this is something that's happened at the deal table a lot of times when we're helping our clients get there. They didn't have a plan to begin with. They did not have an M&A plan in the beginning. And some of them who have partners, that's sometimes the hardest deals to do because one partner wants it, one doesn't. One might have a life-changing, altering, like their spouse gets sick, they get sick, they have to exit. And that wasn't part of the plan. So those kind of partnerships, those kind of deals sometimes are very complicated because there are other people to consider in the deal.
Okay.
What do you find are the reasons that MSP would desire this as an outcome instead of continuing to run the business? Is it retirement? Is that a strong forcing function, or are there other motivators that are getting them at the table?
The top three that get them to the table, one is life-changing, something that happens in their life, whether it's, a spouse gets ill, they need to be there for care. That's a common thing. Second thing that's super common in this space is that it's just time. A lot of these guys, are up at 3 a.m. A lot of them miss holidays, miss birthdays, anniversaries. I've heard of MSPs who've had, multiple divorces. Some of these guys have lost their relationship with their kids. Some of them lose their hair. You and I are lucky. We've kept our hair in the entrepreneurship, mission that we're on to help the world. So some of them have lost something. And so Mike, being able to sell and then exit with that lump sum of money is very appealing to some of these guys. And then the third, and this is probably just, when you're dealing with a business focused person, like a lot of our MSPs will come into this space because they were either the IT guy or the IT provider maybe for a client. And then they exited the company and that client said, hey, why don't you just take us on as your first client? The third reason is when you're coming in as a business mindset and a business strategy, you already set up the exit as part of your plan. So Mike, a lot of them who are coming in and exiting, in the first 5 years of their business it's a business strategy that they're playing out.
Okay, so it's you find there are some that are intentionally
Yes.
including this as part of their roadmap from start to finish.
Yep.
Okay. And what would you on the merger and acquisition deals that you've experienced? What sort of proportions are we talking between intentionally including this in the roadmap, or like they're reaching retirement age, they're looking at as the accomplishment milestone to end off a long career, or a forcing function that something undesirable is causing them to sell out?
Oh, 40% just ready to go and exit the business. 35% is life-changing experience, and then the rest is I'm in to win and to exit. Super simple.
The smallest proportion are the ones
Yes.
intentionally including this as a part of their strategy.
Because the way they got into it, Mike, wasn't because of a business, right? Like they weren't shifting from the guys who come in with a business plan are a business plan. The guys who came in it because they were the IT guy and then decided to open up an MSP, which is a majority of the industry, they don't come in with a business plan or an exit plan. That's what's so magic about, when we sit at a table and go, okay, what's your intent? And they're like, oh, I want to exit. It's like, great, let's build your marketing. Let's get your strategy. Let's get your partnerships. Let's get your stack in order. Those are hard conversations for people who don't even think this way.
All right. That leads me to my next question. We're going down a rabbit hole here. So what type of mindset or triggers would an MSP experience that are leading them up to considering this? Like, tell me the before event so that the audience can try and identify, oh, that sounds like my experience. Right. Where are they in right before they start thinking about an M&A?
So first and foremost, those guys who are just, on the warpath and now they're at a place, maybe they're 10 years into the business and they're ready to exit. Mike, let's talk about those guys and those mindset. It is work. Let's just call it what it is, guys. You guys are tired. You're tired of missing birthdays. You're tired of that look, right? Again, you've let someone down. Some of you have lost relationships, marriages. Some of you have lost children as part of this. Some of you guys have lost all your hair. That loss, right? That feeling of regret is a very, very real feeling, Mike, for some of these guys at that stage, because they're like, what do I have at the end of the day? I'm going to just keep giving to an industry and to clients that, you got so much life to live and here you are and you're just like, I'm done. And so a lot of times this exit, right, they start thinking about it in that moment when they figure out that they're done. It's about an 18-month process after that they start getting their books in order, that they start realizing maybe their operations, maybe it's cut off the fat is what I call it, of the organization. So it's that feeling in your gut, guys, when you know that you're done living a life of regret, that you're done being frustrated with, gosh, I have other things I could be doing. I got other ideas. A lot of our MSPs, Mike, they develop software, they develop type of products. Some of them develop different IP that they're like, sure, I could just kind of go out and be a vendor to my MSPs. I'm like, perfect, let's do it. And so a lot of them transition because they built it in their MSP that they want to go to market. And we get those type of clients all the time because they finally realize that they have something proprietary that could help another MSP. And so that transition, guys, those two feelings are very real. I've been able to cut that with a knife and say, okay, you're ready, let's prepare. But it's an 18-month process once that happens. The second person who's going through some sort of traumatic experience, some sort of what I call it's an incident that triggers this event, right? This is just a shock. Like, Mike, I don't know if you've ever been on a roller coaster when you get to the top and then you're at that moment where it's going to drop and you can see, right? And then it's like, and you drop. And that free fall is that feeling when you're hit with something you can't control. That is a feeling that is real. And I'm sure that your listeners are going to feel that when it's like, I don't know what else to do. I've got to get rid of this, business. I've got to get rid of this partnership. I got to get rid of what's taking up my time and my focus so I can reposition. This happens quite often when you see what we call like a flash sale. Like, I just got to get out of the business. Give me what I need so we can go. They're probably messy books. There's probably messy relationships. There's probably messy operations because they don't have 18 months to fix it. What they want to do is exit really quickly. And that free fall feeling, guys, that you're feeling as you're thinking about like what could happen, I just want to encourage you to have a plan before that happens. Sometimes some of you are in partnerships right now. Some of you are like living it up. Like you guys are like on a plane, you guys are doing your thing. And you're like, it's never going to happen. And that's the moment when it happens. So Mike, when I say that free fall feeling, if it can motivate you guys, that gut that you feel like, wow, what would happen if someone needed me and I couldn't get away from my business? Because you guys are the technicians that seem to want to be on 24/7. Like, I don't understand how that can work in anybody's life or business, but that feeling that you guys have, my encouragement to you is to take an assessment and actually maybe just jot this down and say, what would happen if I needed to exit? And then work that way backwards, because we want to help you kind of stand that up, but be realistic about the expectations. And then the third, and Mike, this is where that feeling is, because it's a hot market. This is an industry that's growing. You can kind of see this anywhere in like Forbes. You can kind of see that everyone's eyes is on cybersecurity now. Like, everyone's talking about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity was a thing before, just like AI. This was way before everyone else saw it. The government's been using AI, machine learning. This was 20 years in the making, and the rest of the world just caught up. That's what I always tell everybody. But for many of you who've come into the industry to sell, you started off with an exit plan. You started off with what revenue you wanted to do to exit. You know what your EBITDA is going to be. You know exactly what solutions in your stack. And then fifth and last, you know what industry you're going to sell to. So Mike, they're very prepared. There's no emotion. There's no feeling of, oh my gosh, it's just a good business sense. And that's good business entrepreneurs who've failed many, many times but now are succeeding with picking this industry.
I hear a similar theme to the types of conversations that the MSPs have with their clients about being proactive to invest in resiliency. In those cases, we were talking about more technology-related resiliency, which ends up being business resiliency anyways. And you're talking about business resiliency here, the ability to handle a life-altering incident to the directors or key person.
Yes.
That's business resiliency, the same type that you would talk with, that MSP would talk with their clients regarding like a ransomware incident or something more technically related. But we're talking about the same level of resiliency, and now you're positioning the same preparedness you do for a merger and acquisition deal, but just as business resiliency.
Right. And it's part of what makes us strong, guys. It's that muscle. And, Mike, I think a lot of people don't exercise that business resiliency because they don't think about that. They're in the kind of the middle of their business where they're like doing the heavy lift. They're doing all the work. They're the fulfillment. They're the ones where, the customers call them. That's the hardest part of this business resiliency, what I consider muscle. And if you're in business long enough, you're working this into your plan. It's kind of what, us OGs are already doing.
All right, let's continue on that thought process. Break us down some of the basics on what a business owner, an MSP business owner, needs to, like, what are the building blocks that they need to focus on to prepare themselves for this conversation?
Okay, so I think many of you who listen, I'm sure, many of the things that Mike's talked about, your sales, your marketing, your operations, your stack, even down to your agreements, even to the industries that you're wanting to go into or are in. Here's a couple of things, and I'm not going to be able to talk about all of them, but I just want to kind of start the conversation. So first and foremost, you got to know what your target is. At Fornix, we talk about increasing the target surface instead of trying to get it so narrow that it's so small that you can't even hit it. So our goal is to look at what your target is. Let's increase the surface of your target. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? How are you going to get there? And if that's a number, if that's number of clients, is that per seat charge? Many of you MSPs, are struggling maybe at the 50 to 75. Some of you are, outliers where you're getting paid $1,200 to $1,500 per seat. That's great. But what is your target? And I think that's something that no one talks about because they're getting in there and they're just working and it's the grind. Second is you can't do this all by yourself. I don't know anyone who's ever succeeded in life without having someone else help them. So second and foremost is what team do you need to get there? And this is usually where your strengths are what you're great at, and whatever your weaknesses are, either hire it out, contract it out. This is how some of you get into what I consider the MSP partnership trap. Because you're so avoidant of it, but you need a partner to help you, but you're not really clear about what that partnership looks like and who's going to do what, who's going to own what bag. And of course, at the end of the day, what is your exit strategy when you have that partner? have a conversation. It might be your spouse, it might be your best friend. And people change, people evolve. Every time I advise people through an M&A process, I always say, think of all the things that could happen that are terrible, that you would never wish upon everyone else, and then write out your business partnership plan with that, because that's the reality of it. Third, and this is probably going to be for a lot of my more mature MSPs as you guys are exiting, the number does matter, right? I don't want to talk about your EBITDA, but what is it that you need to walk away from the business so that you can satisfy maybe some projects you've got, maybe some other businesses you want to fund, maybe some of your retirement plans. But a lot of you don't know what that number is. And so sometimes you're looking at your books and you're saying, well, Charlene, I'm $2 million in revenue. And I'm like, okay, great. So what is it going to take for you to get to 5 million? What are those benchmarks? What are those steps that have to happen? And then it becomes the mechanics of it, right? Your operations. Like, do you have a PSA tool? I know a lot of smaller MSPs don't have a PSA tool. They usually are like Excel spreadsheet, pretty much easy to do, handle, manage. But as you get bigger and you want to become more profitable and more efficient, PSA, your operations, do you need to hire a level 2, level 3? Are you going to start coaching them up to replace you? And then that operation piece is back into the basic foundation of sales and marketing. And of course, what does that look like? Are you going to spend time on, sales training? Are you going to focus on marketing strategy? Are you going to focus on being the marketer? A lot of you come to us and, they're like, well, I need better marketing. Well, you actually need a strategy. And that's, Mike, where we really shine, is the strategy and execution. It's so funny to me when people are like, man, marketing is really easy. I'm like, oh, okay. Tell me how that is driven in your business, because marketing is work. Sales is work. All of these skills that you get are work, and perfecting it and improving it over time is what works. And just a bonus I want to throw in there, guys, your health. I know a lot of people don't talk about this, but one of the big things that I want to champion as you guys are thinking about, where you are in your business, is your health. It's a very common problem in our industry where, there's tons and tons of us working, sedentary. We're not moving our body. We're not eating the right foods. We're not getting the regular checkups or even sleep. We just need to focus on the things that make our business successful. And if you're the key man that's running the show, your health has to be a part of that formula. So when you look at this overall, I just don't want it to be, the grind. I want it to be so that, you'll be able to enjoy the benefits of going through an M&A. I hope that helps, Mike.
Mm-hmm. It's important to get some of these like basics in so that people can start thinking about this, especially when you're talking about some of the more business administrative ones, like the relationships that the business owner may have with business partners.
Right.
Because I think that's easy to fall through the cracks when you're on the honeymoon of starting your business early and things are going well and you're making money, and then you just that just locks in.
Mm-hmm.
And then 10 years later, you remember that there aren't really any clear divorce clauses. Like who gets to say it's time to sell, who has to approve that, who has to sign the papers. Those types of surprises are definitely issues that you need to resolve early in this roadmap. Otherwise, they're going to come up late, like you had mentioned. They're going to come up late in the deal process and tarnish the value.
Yes, totally. And guys, some deals have fallen apart because the partner's like, I don't want to sell. And it's like, well, you should have known that before you signed the LOI, got to this place, spent 18 months working on this, and now the deal falls apart. I mean, it's just unfortunate, but it really does happen.
Since the vast majority of MSPs are 10 employees or less, and statistically most American businesses are making under $1 million in revenue, where in that scale should an MSP start thinking about this as an exit option?
Right.
And, like if they're close to the 10 employees and $1 million in revenue, what do they need to do in order to make this conversation more meaningful for them?
Well, I think first, let's talk about the first part of it. For those who are making $1 million or less, many of you are probably at the 750,000 point. That's where we see a lot of, you guys really starting to have that conversation of growth. And Mike, it's because they were just the technician for a couple of accounts. And then they realize, hey, I could do more business, or I got a referral, or hey, I'm going into this industry, so I want to do more. So they end up kind of like happenstance. It just kind of works its way out. But it's the length of time, Mike, that we're trying to cut in. So I want to make sure this is super clear to the listeners. Some of you get to $1 million after 10 years, and I'm really shocked because I don't understand why in an industry that's booming, the industry that has a humongous, opportunity, why it takes so long to get there. It's because we don't start off with a business plan, a sales and marketing strategy. We're not executing with our vendors and partners, right? And then, of course, you guys will bring on a partner strategically because you want someone else to share the load of the work. So, Mike, let's just get really clear. That $750,000 revenue, those are the habits. Those are some of the characteristics of those. As they think about it, some of them are happy just to stay there. They're happy to be making $150,000 a year. They're able to call their shots. They're able to, call their buddy to cover for a weekend, maybe. They're not really dealing with any more needs. They're just trying to tell their clients, hey, this is what we provide, and we're pretty happy doing that. So
this
you've
is the
got
well-paid job business.
Yes, this
right?
is the employee mindset.
Right.
Right.
You have a great paying job.
Yes. And that's why I want to be really clear on this, podcast today, because that's where a lot of them just kind of stay, and they're not going to entertain an execution of, M&A yet. That's going to be either, a son or a friend, or maybe someone they know that's like, hey guys, I'm ready to exit. And maybe it's their 75th birthday and they're finally ready to do that. But the guys who are in that next step of $1 million, who are like, I've tasted $1 million, I want more. That's where you get that M&A conversation started. And so a lot of you guys who are on this podcast, I want you guys to do two things. One is really just ask yourself, what is your exit plan? And if you could see yourself exiting a plan in 2 years, then I would start today with that, because at least you could get your books right. Maybe some of you would actually finally hire the person to replace you because it's all hinged on you. Third, and this is painful for me to say, guys, some of you are not where you want to be in your career in life. Some of you want to just sell the business so that you can move on to something else that's been interesting to you or something you've built. So a lot of you are at that $1 million mark, that jump off point is what I call it. A lot of you guys, if you guys are thinking about it, I would start today, immediately. And if you have a partner, I would say, don't wait to your quarterly business review. I would say, let's have a conversation today. And the question would be, hey, what would it look like if we wanted to exit? Because a lot of times this exit, guys, when you're at the 1 million, you don't have a lot of support anyway. And so someone coming in to buy you might say, all right, I need you to stay on for 12 months. I need to make sure the operations is working. I need to make sure your clients are happy and that the handoff is very smooth. And that's a really good buy. That's a smart way of doing business through an M&A. And then for you guys who are above that $1 million mark, maybe you're at the 2 to 5 million, what you did at $1 million is not what's going to get you there. Let me just be super clear. What you thought gets you to 2 to 5 million is not what gets you there from what you're doing right now in $1 million. So that's going to be operations. That's going to be a PSA. That's going to be looking at your stack. That's going to be looking at your marketing efforts. Like, you've got to be out there. You've got to look at your margins. Some of you need to work with your vendors to get better margins. Some of you are unfortunately not willing to look at maybe other verticals you could be in. So that's an invitation. If you're trying to hit that 2 to 5 million, you got to look at things a little differently. That's a growth strategy. That's more of a, how do I work more, like, better, faster, stronger, more efficient. I hope that helps,
the bottom
Mike.
end of the range that the private equity group would be considering to purchase? Like, are $1 million revenue MSPs being purchased? Is that the right metric we should be looking at, or is there some other number that we should use?
So they're looking at more of the 5 to 10 million is that sweet spot, because they're a lot more profitable. There's a lot more market share. There's a lot more stability. When people try to sell at $1 million, it still just feels kind of like the employee mindset. It's a job. They're not looking for growth. They're not in industries that are strategically beneficial. And I'll give you an example. If you were to talk to an MSP that says, I deal with small businesses, that's great. That's awesome. Keep helping them. But if you look at the SMB and go, all right, during COVID, as an example, they closed their doors. They weren't operating for at least 6 months. That is not a profitable business, because that could happen. So what you want to do is, when you're looking at maybe your 5 to 10 million plan, you want to look at industries that meter hospitals, right? So PCI compliance is important for anyone who's online, HIPAA, CMMC for vendors, manufacturers, right? Big box companies. These are things that they have to follow the rules on. And so, Mike, that transition 5 to 10 million, they totally do business totally different than, an employee kind of driven MSP.
Okay. So if someone listening right now is making $1 million annually in revenue,
Mm-hmm.
and they're thinking, I want to sell this business in 2 years, your
Mm-hmm.
message to them is there's a lot of work that you have to do, because at least if you want to sell it to a private equity group, they're
Mm-hmm.
considering a higher revenue
Yes.
threshold just to start the conversation.
Yes, because they want to make sure that it's profitable, guys, right? Remember, they know that this is your blood, sweat, and tears. I just want to hold your hand in the process. Like, I get that emotion where you're like fighting for every deal you get, and you're fighting, right? The fact that you spent hundreds of hours during Christmas, New Year's Eve, birthdays, anniversaries, working for these clients. That's not the mindset to go in. They're not looking at it as an emotional purchase. They're looking at profitability, scale, and then efficiency. That's what they're looking for.
To put a sales lens to it, like, that's the seller thinking about themselves. My value should be based on the amount of effort I put in, not necessarily because the buyer is the one setting the price.
Mm-hmm.
And the buyer wants to know what's in it for them.
Exactly. Again, that's lost a lot, Mike. That's something that you and I will always go back and forth on, because it's shifting them away from about themselves. It's more like, how do I make myself more attractive to a buyer who's going to spend the money and time? And that's why the employee mindset, guys, does not work when you're at that next level. You have to put on that business strategic hat. You have to have a group around you to support you.
All right, that's perfect segue into the final theme of questions here. What makes a business valuable to the purchaser, private equity group? What are the value drivers that the audience can use now? Let's say that they're 19 months early from this thing. So, like, they got a month to let your idea soak in. What things do they need to start doing now to make the pitch valuable to a private equity group?
Oh, I appreciate that. That's a hot question. So let me just make it super easy, guys. Here are 5 points that need to happen. First and foremost, I don't want you to walk into this conversation, if you have a business partner, with like guns blazing, like, we're going to sell. I want you to have a conversation about it and say, hey, this is something I'm thinking about. I listened to Charlene and Mike today, and we haven't really talked about an exit. What does that look like for you? What does that mean for you? Because a lot of times you guys are at different stages in your personal life that, can impact your decision on the business. So first and foremost, if you have a business partner, have a conversation today just to get it out in the open, put it as part of your agenda. Maybe you do a weekly, monthly meeting and just kind of start talking about it, right? Second, and this is probably where a lot of the jumping off point, that feeling in your gut. Remember when I said it's like the roller coaster, you're at the top and then free fall. I want you to start planning this as a way for you to have peace of mind. Things happen, things can change overnight, literally. Some of you who have families, some of you have spent, time away from them. If things were to be catastrophic and something happened, life-altering event, you would never want to say, hey, wait a minute, I got to work on my business. Let me go ahead and fix this first before I can ever, go to a doctor's appointment. That's not what we want. We want you to talk about those hard things. So second is, what is your plan if and when the business needs to run without you? And if you can see immediately that the business cannot run without you, then you know that you really have some work to do, okay? Because that's just the reality, right? If your customers needed to call you and you were dealing with, some appointments, or maybe you had to deal with things out of town and you were not available, then the business would die. That's how you know the business is not profitable. That's how you know that the business can't continue. And that's what turns off a PE firm. That's what turns off an investor or a buyer. Because if you're the key person and you were to walk away, they don't have a machine. They need a business to be a machine that's going to continually to print profitability, right? Third, and this is something that Mike will probably appreciate. Third is the mindset. A lot of times there's a lot of emotion. I have seen people go through therapy as they go through an acquisition, as they go through figuring out their books, because it's very stressful. Like, now your accounting has to be right. You have to figure out your operations. You have to look at your MSA agreements. Like, all of a sudden, the things that you kind of just took for granted is kind of like a checkbox. Like, you've got to do all this work. So there's a lot of emotional pressure, a lot of emotional strain, both for you personally and professionally. So third, and definitely not last, I want you to focus in on, that I got a checkbox. I got to make this a business that appeals to a buyer, you don't want to sell them a mess. I mean, you wouldn't put yourself in a situation where you're buying a hot mess. You would like, no, I need these things to be fixed, right? I need these things to be improved. Second, and definitely one more, and I just want to kind of give you the first injection of reality when you're doing M&A. There's a lot of brokers, there's a lot of PE firms, there's a lot of people who are going to want to talk to you, and you're going to want to talk to them. I would be very concerned if they were throwing tons of LOIs around. I would be very concerned if they're like, hey, we're going to give you $10 million for your business. And you're like, wait a minute, that sounds really good. And you're going to wonder, how come they're going to give me $10 million? They haven't done their due diligence. And so I just want you to be able to interview them. And we've got a list of questions that we'd love to share with you as you check me out on LinkedIn or connect with me. But I want you to be able to interview the person who's going to do the deal. And that's part of you understanding what the person wants to buy you for and how much and what they're looking for. And first and foremost, when you make the decision to say, okay, sure, I want to kind of start this path of M&A, I want you to set some benchmarks, because hopefully you've done your 2025 planning and your 2026 planning. I don't want you to just come in and be like, hey, Shar, we're going to change the world today. I'm like, oh, okay, that's great. Well, what's the plan? Have some benchmarks along the way. Like when you hit a certain revenue, when you hit so many clients, when you start looking at your business as a whole picture, I like you guys to take a step back. Sometimes you're married to the problem because you are the problem, right? You're just so in it and the grind that you can't take a step back. But my invitation to you is to just look at benchmarks as a way to build your business around this M&A decision so that you can appropriately spend time, money, and effort into looking at the opportunity, because these PE firms are going to sign that LOI with you and then they're going to be like, okay, let's start doing our due diligence. And it takes months. Lawyers take all of the time to review everything because you probably didn't have everything organized. So you don't want to spend that extra time. You don't want to have to spend that extra money if you could get those things organized in the first place. So Mike, those are some 5 heavy hitter, just straight up M&A if you're trying to make yourself more appealing to a potential buyer. But it's just really good if you get that stuff organized before a PE firm comes in or another MSP wants to acquire you. There is something that I want to share really quick, Mike, before we do this. There is something called M&A insurance. I have seen deals where you might sell your business or you're the buyer of that business and you didn't get M&A insurance. I have seen deals where they've bought a business and there was some sort of unresolved legal issue that maybe sometimes the business owner didn't know about or the buyer didn't know about. But if you have M&A insurance, it will cover that. So when you acquire a business, you're not going to carry that responsibility. That with that insurance, it protects you as the buyer to say, hold on, that wasn't during the time that we acquired the business. So we do not want to deal with that, and we don't have to legally be responsible for that. I just wanted to throw that in because that's a tip that I have seen.
Can you give us an example?
Oh yeah. So I'll tell you this.
So we can understand.
Yeah. So this MSP it is in the Midwest. So I can just kind of tell you. And they had gone through an M&A. Perfect. Purchased the smaller MSP, added it on, bolted it on. I mean, they were operating. And about 6 months later, I guess a disgruntled client actually was filing a lawsuit against the company and didn't know that they were going through an M&A. And so they didn't do M&A insurance. And what happened was the business owner of the new MSP, right, who acquired, had to go to court and said, hey, this wasn't us. But because that wasn't in their insurance, they couldn't go back to the MSP they bought and said, hey, you guys need to handle this. They said, no, sorry. They had to deal.
They purchased the liability.
They purchased the liability.
They bought a liability. Okay.
But this is the problem. You just don't know, right? And these are the little tricks of the trade that, because we've been at the deal table, because we get our clients through it, Mike, we've seen it all. We just want you to have a better understanding of where you are from the buyer side and the seller side. Like, a lot of people are all about themselves. And Mike, you brought up such a good point. Like, make yourself appeal to the buyer. And if you were going to buy the business, wouldn't you want to have someone who's done all the books, done all the sales and marketing, has done all the work, so that you're buying something that's great?
Right. That's it. Like, this is a sales process. That's not a surprise. It's a sales process, and you have to make a valuable pitch to a buyer to help them achieve something they want, not something that you want. Like, you want to sell for the maximum amount of money possible, but they don't want to buy for the maximum amount of money possible because they have their own return on investment calculation that they have to match.
Yes.
Give us some quick stats on that. Like, if let's say the MSP is $5 million in revenue, what's a PE firm like napkin math on this? In terms of, like, you talked about EBITDA, what is that? They break it down in 30 seconds and like they keep it for 5 years and they sell it to someone else. Is that the deal? Or they keep it for 5 years and the PE firm makes their money on distributions? What's the deal?
So depending on the stack, so there's first and foremost is your customer list. Like, who are you currently selling to, right? Do you have a lot of small clients? Do you have a lot of big clients? You never want 30% of your revenue to be one client. And I want to say that again, Mike, sorry, I have to repeat myself, but you do not want one client to be 30% of your revenue. They need you to have a diversified portfolio of industries that have what I consider promised recurring revenue, MRR, and that you have what I consider a spreadsheet that says your revenue isn't dependent on one client, and that one client isn't going to hurt you if they ever left. You would just have other clients that would absorb it and you'd be fine. Because the PE firm wants to take something that's going to make them money, of course. They're going to acquire you, and then they're going to want to, 5x their money. So when you think about EBITDA, guys, that is your baseline of what really truly is your revenue. After all the expenses are cut out and all your margins are paid out and yourself, hopefully you're paying yourself. If you're not even paying yourself, then I think you should not even entertain M&A until you get a plan in place to pay yourself. Side note. So when you look at your EBITDA, there's just two things that a lot of our brokers will look at. One is that if you're at a 5 million, right, you should have your revenue probably for what you can consider a profit, not a gross, a profit is about $1 million to about $950. That's a very conservative, because you want to be conservative. A lot of you guys are going to say, sure, no, they need too much. No, be as conservative as possible because it's all an upside. Second, when you look at your books, right, and you're looking at the fact that not only one client is, all of your revenue, that your profit first is the goal. And that's the reason why I co-authored that book, Profit First, because I just need our industry to get into a place where they're profitable. Is that you need to look at your revenue and your partners that you have in your stack and see what your margins are, guys. Because remember, you're able to deliver services based on the vendors in your stack. And a lot of you are, there with partners and relationships, and I get that. But because the PE firm is purchasing your business and these are services that are third party, you need to look at your agreements. Because, Mike, those revenue margins are so important to a PE firm because they want to know that this business isn't going out of business. They want to know that you've renegotiated maybe a better profit margin. A lot of you guys don't even know what your contracts are. So you're expecting that this vendor that you're using in your stack is going to honor those prices. Some of them change it, and you don't change your per seat. I need you to change your per seat in order for you to become more profitable. And that's what increases your EBITDA. So there are things right now, Mike, that they can do immediately to increase the value of their business.
Excellent. Okay, this has been a fun little mini masterclass, stripping away some of the mysticism behind M&A, because it's a fun word. We all watch the HBO series Billions and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
This is now a real part of the MSP experience, especially since the post-COVID sort of stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, this is great. And I think hearing the value drivers is important because not only will it increase the sale value, but it also will increase the intrinsic value of the business, which is great. Yes. And then I really like your theme about the business resiliency, because that's whether you plan on selling the business or not, you want it to be a business that can operate and make money and not a job that pays you to be there.
Yes.
That is the desire. We just did an episode with Danny Zadorek, and he was talking about working on the business instead of in the business. And that's the categorical difference here is if you work in the business, it's a well-paying job, which is great for many. But if you want to have a factory that makes people happy and earns money by doing so, you got to be able to remove yourself as the key person and have machines, not that humans are machines, but like the processes are the machines that create value.
Well, and that's why I said, what if you guys went back today to your office and just said, could I take a 3-day vacation and not have anyone call me? And if that is the case, it's yes, great. Then you're doing everything right. But if it's no, and you couldn't be there on vacation because you're still answering your phone, you're still answering emails, which is normal. I get it. I'm not trying to act like this is like impossible. We all do it.
It takes planning.
It takes planning.
It's not a thing like that. Right?
Yes. But if you had a life-altering experience, right, that same yes should be the same yes for that. And if it can't, then you know that that's the part you need to focus on. That's why I said benchmarks are important as you go down this 18-month plan to really get your business into M&A, because a lot of you don't have 18 months to plan for these life-altering situations. And if you can't answer that question today, after you hop off this call and are just like, all right, let's be honest with myself. And what I mean by honest is honest to a place where you can take action. I don't want honest just because you're like all hands, on deck and everyone's going to solve my problem. That's not the goal. The goal is to be so honest that you can actually say, I'm going to take some action now because I'm that honest with myself.
Sweet. Right on. All right, Charlene, wonderful getting your perspective on this. It's been a hot buzz. We had a lot of conversations about it at the MSP Expo.
Yes.
So great perspective. I feel like we got to do a follow-up masterclass on like the value drivers and your profit first stuff. That's got a whole.
Yep. The book's been published and it's out and we're taking it on the road. And it's like you, Mike, if you're not doing something, something's wrong, you got to just be moving and shaking. This is how it is. It's called the grind, guys. Mike, I like to run after Mike because he's doing it himself. He knows. He's like wiping off his tears. He's like, what am I doing here today? I'm like, I don't know. You're just making it happen.
Beautiful. All right, Charlene, thanks for joining the show. This has been Charlene Ignacio from Fornix Marketing.
Yes.
Tell the audience where they can find more about you.
Hey, connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to meet people. Mike was like, sure. I'm like, let's talk some more. And it's just been so fun. But connect with me on LinkedIn, guys. You know why? Because I like to talk to real people. I don't know about you, but I'm all about people. This is what we're in. I think a lot of people get so caught up in automations and sequences that they can't just really have a conversation. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, connect with Mike, say, hey, I got to talk to that crazy Hawaiian girl. I'm all in. I love to eat. I love to eat. Mike knows this. We love to eat and it's just great. So connect with me on LinkedIn, reach out to me, reach out to Mike. I'd love to answer those questions and kind of, hear where you are and how can I help you solve your problem?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining the show, Charlene.
Thanks so much.
Enjoyed this episode? Hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe.